Alright, so we're going to talk about seconds today for a quick little meeting. And we'll go over what makes a second, why they're here, and then like who they ultimately go to. And so a couple of things coming from the production chase, what are a couple of things that let a climbing hold land in our second spin?
There's like a mark on the surface, pretty much anything cosmetic. Any issues with them that make them not perfect, but still perfectly climbable.
Yep, so a mark on the surface, cosmetic things. So I just grabbed a random one here. It looks like this one. Because this is a dual texture hold, this one, from what I can tell, was kicked out because our mold life, dual texture hold, we only get so many pours out of it before it starts to go to a matte finish. And this one's trying to get to that point where it landed in the second spin, just because of the dual texture finish. Let's go through a couple. One of the fun surprises when you're getting seconds is obviously you can get some crazy colors in here. Why did these land in the second spin? Can you guys tell on this one?
What does the underside of the green one look like?
Yeah, so this is a two-piece mold, and so like the underside pinched together a little weird, and so there's like an actual little lip, which doesn't make it a first, but as a second, it's a little unique. You have like this crimp on this like handlebar. Actually makes it like way easier. If we go through a few more, so we talked about the cosmetics. What else outside of cosmetics would make it a second? So whether it's like, we also have color defects, so it's either like a texture defect or a color defect. What else?
Short pour? Sorry. It's not poured all the way?
Yeah, so a short pour, and so that's one if we didn't have enough plastic, and if this mold, if this is a full height mold, the mold sit like this. If we only had enough plastic to pour up to like here, it might change like the profile. And so especially on jugs, it might, like this one, I think, if it's poured short, it's really going to change like how easy you can get your fingers in there. See how close my knuckles are to the edge. This hold actually comes up another like ½ inch. So it's gonna, this one's gonna be definitely for like smaller hands. So yeah, short pours is another reason. What else?
The bolt hole is funky. Sometimes our mold puts in like a crooked stem, so we have to drill it out straight and have 2 holes.
Yep, yep. And so sometimes the molds, different mold problems will create seconds. So you talked about like the bolt hole. We have silicone stems, and so if the silicone over time like starts to bend, it might drill out a little funny. So then we'll straighten it out, but it might look weird on the back. So it's just going to be an aesthetic thing, but it won't be a structural thing on that one. Other times, because of these big plugs, the registration might be slightly off, so it might be a little thinner and thicker. And again, we wouldn't sell that as a first, but it'd go in the second spin if we decided that it wasn't a structural problem and it wouldn't be a problem for someone buying out of our seconds. It's not something that's going to blow up in their face as they're climbing on it. All right, what else would make a second?
Oversanded?
Oversanded?
Yeah.
Yep, so oversanded would be it would create the same seconds problem as a short pour. And so if we spend too much time on the belt sander, you can actually change the angle of it, or you can just sand it too far. And so when we're post-production, like we can create seconds too. Same thing in post-production, if we do like nicks or we drop it or different things could let it land in the second spin. All right, why do we love seconds so much as a company?
Gets every hand on a hole better.
Gets every hand on a hole better? Like who are we serving by selling seconds?
Home walls.
Home walls, yep. So I think the main people that are coming through here, there's definitely some gyms that buy off of our seconds. But as you think about like enabling climbing and making climbing accessible, this is a way that you're buying holds for more than like 50% off of retail. And so as you're building that climbing wall in your basement or for your kids or whatever it looks like, or even like your gym, like I said, some gyms 5 seconds, you're getting it at a completely different budget. And so you can fill that wall with bigger, funner holds than you would normally if you just went retail. Or if you only have a limited budget, like it actually makes building that climbing wall possible, you know, because you're doing it for half the cost. And we were talking about holds. You can be ranging anywhere from like $5 to $10 a hold, and so if you're building a big climbing wall, that adds up, you know, really fast. And with climbing holds, no matter what, you're getting what you pay for with plastic. And so as you think about, like we sell holds by the pound, and it doesn't matter if you're buying it by the pound in seconds or you're just buying a hold and it has a price tag to it. You're just buying plastic. And so just visually, how many of these holds would be in this one? Just, there's no right or wrong answer. Like what? What do you think?
Like in terms of weight?
Just plastic. Like, so if, what I say is like when you're buying climbing holds, you're buying plastic. And so this weighs so much and this weighs so much. You're both buying one climbing hold. And this one climbing hold goes on your wall. And so there's probably like what? 6 of these in here. It has nice hollow back to it. You know, 6, 10, however many. Like we could throw it on the scale and actually like put a number to it. But what I was saying with like the budget is if you're buying this by the pound, there's your budget can go a lot further. So as you think about like trying to buy big fun holds, if you're buying this at retail and you're trying to buy a whole bunch of big holds, like it's gonna be like you're gonna be spending thousands of dollars for your little basement home woody. Or you take that same 1,000 and you just buy seconds. Like you can, you know, email Marta and say, hey, I want lots of big fun holds. Like she can load it up with, you know, a bunch of big fun holds. And so that $1,000 just went at least twice as far. Like think about like you're just buying plastic. And so when you're buying plastic at 50% less, you can buy a lot bigger, you know, different, more interesting holds with that same budget. So just a quick thing. I know like Marty, you're the main one that like picks out seconds when orders come in. And what's kind of thinking about guys that are making this and like putting them up here, what's kind of the process or what's like a common email that you'll get, and then how do you think about putting together seconds as a package?
Well, for the most part, I'll ask people what they want or what they're working with. If it's a home wall, if it's a gym, do they want a specific style of hold? Do they want a variety to play around with? And so I'll try and get as much information out of the customer first to see where they're at, and then investigate with our stock to see what we can provide for them. So if they want a variety, we'll try to do you know, some nice positive holds with some of the jugs, but then also throw in some like foot chips and smaller holds so that there's a good diversity for them to play with, and kind of experiment with things that are easier and also things that are harder. So that's usually what we'll go to when sending out seconds, is to give out a variety, unless there's a specific request. So, yep.
And so as you guys bring up the seconds and you stock them, it's important that we keep them in order. So we have our slopers down there, our screw-ons there, because as Marta gets that order and someone's saying, hey, I have this really steep wall and I need a bunch of jugs, it makes her job easy, and it makes it easier to serve that customer to walk in, you know, grab our roof jugs and then our other jugs over here, and she can put together that box and like get it as close as possible. And so we don't guarantee anyone's going to get what they request, but depending on our inventory, which is, as you guys know, like always fluctuating, like we'll do our best as a company as we come over here and like hit their request. And so if they ask for all slopers and we don't have any slopers, we're probably going to go over here to the ledges, because that's like the next closest thing. Like it's not a jug, it's like a flat ledge. And so we'll tailor it as close as possible. If they ask for big holds, you know, we'll get them as close as we can to like big or small holds or screw-ons or not screw-ons. And so we try to accommodate, but they're seconds and they're at such a discount that we can't like guarantee anything. And so we just we do our best to enable climbing and making it that when those holds show up, that they're gonna be usable on whatever angle or kids or strong climbers or whatever ability level they're climbing at, that'll work for them. So, any questions on seconds?
For those that don't know, what's the story on the really fun, funky colored ones? They're like multi-layered.
What's the story on the fun, funky colored ones?
Yeah. Yeah, like why do we have them? Why are they layered? Why are they so different?
Yeah, so these are all one-offs, and so as we're pouring, we might be doing a large order. Like, we can tell the story here. So obviously this day started, and we were pouring gray in the beginning of the day. And we had a little bit of gray left over, and then it went into this mold. So we knew we were creating a second when we were doing this, and it's about being a steward and like using our plastic and knowing like that this plastic is still good. The next batch would have been a pink batch of plastic, and then the batch after that, like, that day would have been like a green. So those were like the three colors that we hit maybe that morning or that afternoon. And so you can just see like the leftover plastic that was thrown into a mold. So that's what you're talking about, kind of the story. And so you'll get some kind of crazy stuff, but there's lots of colors. There might be like tons of layers and some holds, so these can be pretty fun, and you can get some wild looking things. There's some really ugly looking color combinations too, so it just depends. Other questions on seconds?
At what point do we determine a hold is not good enough to even be a second?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you're looking, I know there's some holds over here. Let me grab this guy. And so one of the things that makes a second is if the plug, so the plug is this mass in here that makes it hollow. Sometimes your registration gets off and the walls will get really thin. And so this one's one that got really thin, we actually patched it in. But this was probably one that if we weren't able to patch this one with some more plastic and like filling it in to strengthen it, like that would be one that went past as a second, because it was so thin that it would have been prone to either breaking, or you're like, that wall got so thin that you could like bust it through, or some structural thing. And so there are holds that if there's any risk of them breaking or not like being beyond like aesthetic or like a short pour or something in that lines, like if it's ever a safety thing, then it would never make it into the second spin. That was a good question. Other seconds questions?
Are holds that are missing washers still fine to climb on? Like, so those might end up in seconds, right?
Yep, and so that's another good question. If washers go into each hold, and what that does is as the bolt, as you're like driving the bolt in, it just gives the bolt something to rest on. Plastic's really strong too, and so the bolt's not going to grind through that washer. So if we forget to put a washer in and we produce that hold, it's going to go into seconds. Because that plastic's still really strong. Over time, you might, if you're putting it on and off the wall a whole bunch and putting lots of pressure on it, you'll probably start to wear into the plastic some, but it's not going to be a big enough safety thing that your hole's just going to like blow up and come off the wall. Yeah, on those, if it's like really thin, it probably won't make it in the seconds, but we look at how thick the plastic is. As long as like you're looking at like a good 3/4 of an inch of plastic, like there wouldn't be anything wrong with that. And honestly, especially back when we were using a lot of like flatheads, like we never put washers, like, you know, several years ago, like as an industry, we didn't even think about putting washers in climbing holds like that had a flathead, like thin ones for foot chips and some of the smaller crimps. Like we're moving more and more as an industry to socket heads. And washers are definitely nice, but that would be something that would make it in the second spin and wouldn't necessarily make it go in the trash. other questions you got for me?
I think that'll do it.
What about the wood seconds?
What's that?
Do you want to talk about the wood seconds?
Sure. Mostly what we have over on this rack is predominantly the seconds are all climbing holds from our production. So this is going to be, yeah, let's just talk through the different styles. So we have mostly everything coming off of our escape line. We have some of the friction stuff. There is a few working class holds in here. I know we're getting some Kingdom seconds in, which is over pours from Bulgaria, so that's coming from Contax, and then so we'll have seconds coming in there. And so there will be seconds available from all the brands. If you look up here, sometimes we don't always list our training tool seconds. And so like these hang boards, we have seconds of them. We have both the big and the small. We have the wood second, so maybe our eye bolt went in a little crooked, or we got a little funny on the branding. And so there's going to be wood seconds on the training tools, and then at the volume, let's see what's wrong with this volume. So our texture got a little clumpy here, or there might be like a nick on the backside here where the belt sander got away from us. And so there are other seconds, and these currently aren't on the website. We might be getting them up on the website, but a lot of times on stuff like this, our walk-in customers will come and they kind of clear us out, and so we don't necessarily have the need to put them on our website and sell them like all over the place. And with that said, if there's anyone watching, customers can email MARTA or orders at Escape Climbing and be like, hey, do you guys have volumes, or do you guys have any beta boards in stock as seconds, or any training tools? So if people are looking for something specific, that is something that they can clear out. But this is mostly for local people walking in here, and then just kind of picking through these other seconds. All right, so there are no other questions on seconds. That is our wrap on seconds. And honestly, again, it's one of the things at Escape is we look at serving all customers. A lot of times, like as the big gym orders come through and we're producing a lot of holds for that, there's also people building home woodies or walls in their basement or walls for their kids, or different rec walls. Like the seconds is like a great way of getting holds on their wall and like pushing the sport and like opening up for all different types of budgets and needs. So it's something that works well for our production to sell it, and it's also like a huge benefit to people buying this stuff. So that's our seconds.